Thank you very much, Shimei. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you for today's webinar. As Shimei mentioned, my name is Nikki Harry-Charan, and I am the Operations Program Manager here at Canso. And I will be your moderator for the remainder of this 90-minute webinar. Before we dive into today's content, I'd like to highlight that we have 139 registered attendees from various regions worldwide, including air navigation service providers and industry professionals. With a broad audience, I realize some of you may not be familiar with Canso. Therefore, I'd like to take a few minutes to provide a brief overview of Canso and its objectives, recapping the video we just watched. Canso, or the Civil Air Navigation Services Organization, is the global voice of air traffic management. Canso members provide air navigation services to over 90% of the world's air traffic. Our members share information and develop new policies with the goal of improving air navigation services on the ground and in the air. Canso represents its members' views to a wide range of aviation stakeholders, including the International Civil Aviation Organization, better known as ICAO, where we have official observer status. Canso also has an extensive network of associate members drawn from across the aviation industry. Canso focuses on every aspect of aviation where ANSPs have a role. We collaborate with industry associations like ACI, IATA, IFALPA, and IFATCA, along with individual ANSPs industry members, and ICAO to enhance the safety and efficiency of the global aviation ecosystem. Our work adheres to best practices and aligns with current ICAO requirements. With that being said, I'm very excited about today's session. In a few minutes, you will have the opportunity to hear from our Airport Collaborative Decision-Making, or A-CDM, expert. He will discuss the definition, benefits, and implementation of A-CDM. Our speaker will highlight and explain the interconnected responsibilities throughout the A-CDM process, fostering a deeper understanding amongst stakeholders. As Shimei mentioned, you will have the opportunity to ask questions during the presentation. Please type your questions into the Q&A chat as they come to mind. I will post some of these questions to the presenter during the session, and we will also have a dedicated Q&A segment at the end of the webinar. Additionally, all registered attendees will receive an email within a week containing the webinar content. This allows you to focus on the discussion and not worry about taking notes during the webinar. You will be able to rewatch the webinar and view the slides at your convenience. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Eugene Tunishra. Eugene is a recognized expert in A-CDM with extensive experience as an implementation project leader and change manager. He's able to drive ecosystem stakeholders through efficiency and predictability changes in operational performance. At Eurocontrol, Eugene played a pivotal role in leading stakeholder meetings and was instrumental in defining A-CDM documentation. His expertise extends globally, as he has served as an A-CDM instructor across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Eugene's notable achievements include leading Schiphol Air Connection to the Eurocontrol Network Manager Operations Center and spearheading A-CDM initiatives for air traffic control, LVNL, the Netherlands ANSP. His leadership also drove technical and operational changes through A-CDM implementation programs in Vietnam and Oman. Beyond his project leadership, Eugene contributes to international forums, including CANSO, ACI, the European Organization for Civil Aviation Equipment, where he works to enhance A-CDM documentation and implementations worldwide. Without further delay, Eugene, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Eugene Tuinstra. And I hope to provide you some information about airport CDM. Next slide, please. Controls are not working. There. Oh, wait. There is some delay. Myself, I'm well introduced. I'm from 270 Europe, and I've worked at Schiphol, and also established organizations and programs for airport CDM, and implemented worldwide. I'm also focused currently with Kenzo on performance framework and steering on airport CDM performance. The agenda for today will be about why airport CDM is useful for your airports, your environment, your airspace. What is airport CDM? What are the benefits and who should implement it? First, we start with why CDM is necessary. Here is an example on what happens to everyone flying frequently. You expect the aircraft to arrive at gate 22. The equipment and the ground handlers are ready. However, for some reason, the aircraft does not show up there. There has been a late gate change, and instead the aircraft arrives at gate 24. This is inconvenient for the passengers. This is inconvenient for the ground handlers, for the pilot, for the OCC in the airline, since all stakeholders have to remanage, have to replan, and time is lost moving the passengers to the gate 24. This is the inconvenience, one of them many, that happens to many airports all the time. It's standard operation. And how can we put that in a bigger picture of challenges to be overcome? We often find that infrastructure is not optimal use, that data perceived by operators is not used by others. Stakeholders may be working reactive on missing information, trying to collect it, rather than proactive, having it before they need to make operational decisions. We often keep operations for ourselves, where we focus on our specific tasks, but do not understand or wish to think about the task of other operators around us. As a consequence, we blame often or sometimes that other stakeholder because of missing information or something undesired happening. We have information and organizations organized in silos where everybody focuses on their own, not on the other one. As a consequence, we have incomplete situational awareness. To anticipate for the uncertainty caused by someone else, we start buffering our planning. As a consequence, there is no procedures among partners to overcome that. And the buffers are costly situations that we would like to overcome. Examples. Waiting for the slide. What is a challenge or an indicator? How often do aircraft arrive and then have to hold on to the taxiway or apron waiting for their gate to be available? This is taxiway apron congestion. There's fuel burn and emissions, which we like to avoid. Another example is ground handler crews are not aware when the aircraft will actually arrive or depart on the parking location. As a result, suboptimal planning for resources such as ground services equipment, staff, and their scheduling. Airlines, on the other hand, are not aware how long a sector on ground control or the runway or even en route takes as they try to cross it. So they are expecting and assuming delays and adding that to their buffer in the flight schedules. So those flight schedule buffers increase fuel use. Air traffic control expects a taxiway congestion during peaks when traffic is spaced to accommodate the delays. buffers again increasing fuel use. And the ground handler expects the aircraft to arrive early or depart late. Where buffers are increased resource management. So who knows the plan in the stakeholders? Who has the total overview? Airport and air traffic control are not aware when the aircraft is ready for pushback. However, the ground handlers and the airlines do. Airlines are not aware when aircraft will receive startup clearance. However, air traffic control knows that. They make the sequence. Airport and ground handlers know their estimated time of arrival only when the aircraft is close to the stand. However, the airlines and air traffic control know well in advance. So what you get is a lot of people searching for information. And what we need is people to find information and find it instantly, real time, ahead of their decision making. Here is the complete picture of situational awareness, where sample situations are typically the aircraft is ready for pushback, or the aircraft receives the startup clearance, aircraft estimated time of arrival, and the parking stands. And you can see in the graphs that many stakeholders do not know, but someone knows the answer to the question. So we need to exchange that information between stakeholders. We need the puzzle to come together. Now, how do we do that? Do we have a common language for stakeholders to talk about? For example, what is the estimated time of arrival, ETA? What does it mean? Well, for ATC area control, it means an arrival time on terminal control area entry, which is still in the air. For tower control, this is a landing time on the runway. However, for ground handlers, airlines, and the airport, it is the arrival time on the stand. So there is 3 different meanings of one acronym commonly used. The same applies for the estimated time of departure, ETD. It is a takeoff time for tower control. However, for ground handlers, airport, and airlines, it is the pushback time from the stand. Different meanings in a different language. We got to come together and harmonize, make one common language. So what is missing or inaccurate information? The estimated off-block time from the flight plan are often not updated by airlines, despite they know that some delay more than 15 or 30 minutes is upcoming. An aircraft is late in the airport, it means it will fly out much later. The EOBT needs to be updated. Taxi times are calculated based on standard taxi times. Often there is huge variation. Example, Schiphol, where the taxi times vary between 5 and 30 minutes. Many flights plan the same estimated off-block time, even when from the same airline, despite capacity cannot accommodate this demand. Of course, ATC makes a sequence and of course spreads the demand on the capacity available. Hence, for area control, the takeoff time is unpredictable due to the large holding queue because several aircraft push out, have to hold at the queue near the runway, and as a consequence, there could be peak behavior en route that is not known by en route air traffic controllers or adjacent ATC organizations. What if we start sharing data together and planning together? What can we do? The airport could resolve gate conflicts in advance, improve passenger experience. The ground handlers could deploy resources more efficiently. Air traffic control could determine departure sequence earlier, and congestion can be managed in a safer way. Aircraft holding at the stand instead of the taxiway would save fuel. And the pilots would know in advance when to start the engines. They would not hassle to communicate to the tower on the frequency. And airline OCC could plan for unforecasted fleet impacts much earlier. So there is benefits if we collaborate and work together. Airport CDM is that way to collaborate and resolve operational inefficiencies. Airport CDM will improve situational awareness, operational predictability, stakeholder operational decision-making, infrastructure use, and of course, use of human and equipment resources. Summarized, all stakeholders are confronted with operational inefficiencies. That's a fact of life. Working in a silo environment can result in suboptimal decision-making. And there is a need and benefit to collaborate to achieve optimal decision-making and optimal use of resources. I think that's the end of the first. Airport CDM provides mitigation and allows operational stakeholders in a more efficient way.
Thanks, Eugene. Prior to moving on, I just want to encourage everyone to ask any questions in the Q&A chat. If you do have any questions at this time, Eugene, there are no questions.
We move on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what is Airport CDM? Putting it simply, Airport CDM is about the right information to the right people on the right time, so that those operational experts on the ground in the operations room can make the right decision for their people, for the airport, for the safety and efficiency of the operators. This all comes together for people and passengers to have a great experience. What is the Airport CDM concept exactly? It is and will be an operational procedure, an operational mode of working to improve the efficiency of airports, the operational efficiency. It focuses on the turnaround process from the arrival at the stand until the pushback from that same stand. The efficiency is to know better when events are going to happen and to anticipate using predictions. Here is a simple architecture. We call it the milestones. For each flight, there is a common set of flight events that every aircraft goes through. It's the actual landing time at the runway, the actual in-block time at the stand, the actual off-block time when it pushes back, following the actual startup approval time by ATC, and an actual takeoff time from the runway again. These milestones are common for all flights, and they need to be predicted, not just estimated, but also some of them predicted with a commitment from each stakeholder that that is what we will achieve. And by sharing the predictions, we can help each other if and only if every stakeholder participates. Otherwise, we cannot change this procedure and cultural change of operations. So that means the ground handler needs to be part of it. The aircraft operator needs to be part of it. The tower controllers and the apron controllers need to be part of it. There is an airport operator that is managing the gates. And there will also be, in some countries and more countries, a network manager or air traffic flow management operator. In Eurocontrol, in Europe, that is the network manager operations center. There are more users that are on the land side, such as customs, security, immigration, and we recommend that these landside stakeholders or governmental institutions, that they are part of any program for awareness, for future steps into total airport management, perhaps not as active as the earlier mentioned stakeholders, but they need to be informed about airport CDM and why that is good for their operation. So what is the milestone approach, this architecture that I just sketched for you? Well, Eurocontrol came up with a milestone approach with 16 milestones, which are pretty easy to understand and logical from the flight perspective. There is, of course, on the inbound, mostly air traffic control events are taking place. A flight plan for departure for outbound is activated, but the inbound aircraft is still on its way into the airport. It's about to arrive at the airport, and an actual landing time, ALDT, on milestone 6 is registered as an event that confirms the aircraft is at the airport. There is an actual landing time resulting in an actual in-block time, which is also resulting from the aircraft arriving. Milestone 8, the actual commencement of ground handling, is specific for flights that had their operation the day prior to the landing. Of course, on the day of arrival, the actual in-block time is used. For flights that are normal turnaround, actual commencement of ground handling is considered to commence at the actual in-block time. Milestone 9 is an important milestone. We want to predict the readiness of the aircraft, and to do so, the target off-block time is perhaps an acronym that you heard of. It is the most important prediction for CDM. It is the time at which the aircraft operator or ground handler provides their best and most accurate TOBT, taking into account the operational situation, the progress of ground handling, the technical status of the aircraft, the operational status of flight crew and cockpit. The aim of the final TOBT is to provide a timely, accurate, and reliable assessment of the off-block time, the time the aircraft intends and could leave the gate and start. The main benefits of sharing this TOBT are when there are likely to be delays at the departure runway holding point. This can occur when there is a buildup of natural demand, multiple aircraft at the same time wishing to push back from the stand in order to take off. It could also happen in bad weather situations. This TOBT enables air traffic control to build a sequence so that this sequence is providing a situational awareness of the pre-departure demand, and the sequence reflects the capability of air traffic control to push back the aircraft. Milestone 10 is the time that the air traffic control, the tower, will issue the target startup approval time, or TSAT, another acronym that you may have heard of and which is vital to CDM. This occurs during the turnaround progress. Following the receipt of the TOBT, ATC system will calculate and provide this TSAT based on predicted traffic load, the stand and gate location, the runway in use, and the waiting period at the holding position. So the TSAT is very much dependent on this target off-block time TOBT. Should there be any ATFM regulations or CTOT, calculated takeoff time, then that is also a very important parameter impacting on TSAT. So back to the operational process. Milestone 12 is the recording of actual boarding. If there is a late detection of the boarding process, then the airport or ground handler may recommend to update the TOBT in order to say, okay, we are a bit late, the aircraft will not make the earlier time, we're going to delay the aircraft a bit. And here comes the most uncertain time today, milestone 12, the actual ready time, signaling the end of the ground handling involvement and the flight crew ready for startup. This ARDT, actual ready for departure time, is when all doors are closed, boarding bridge removed, pushback vehicle connected, and the aircraft ready to taxi immediately upon the clearance by ATC. The pushback truck has to be part of this readiness. So these are the milestones in a nutshell. Of course, the pilot then calls for ASRT, the readiness of the cockpit, in order to get the actual startup approval from ATC and the clearance. In milestone 15 and 16, the aircraft pushes and takes off. It's a bit slow. So all of this data that you can see emerge from this milestone approach requires the management of data and business rules and technology to collect that data. You can think of sensors, you can think of a platform where this data is collected, and a sequencer used by ATC that makes a sequence. It is, however, very much a human-driven project. Summarized, A-CDM is about reliable information through predictions on operational flight milestones. A-CDM enables steering on incentives, monitoring of performance, and analyzing post-operations. Operational efficiency to airport partners and comfort to passengers. That, in a nutshell, is CDM. Any questions, Nikki?
Not at this time, Eugene. Thanks.
Then we move on. I
Okay.
think we're proceeding well. Let me know if there's
Yes,
any
we
hiccup.
are.
So what are the benefits of airport CDM? Why is it good for your organization? Let's start with the ground handler. They benefit from a predictability of operations. No or less reactivity would enable them to plan for resource management, minimize the impacts of delays, and optimize the turnaround time of that aircraft that they're handling so that they can optimize and improve staff engagement. The aircraft operator benefits from the predictability of operations and improve their on-time performance. This would enable to improve resourcing at the airline, minimize the impact of delays, optimize the turnaround time, and improve staff involvement. The airport operator benefits from an optimized infrastructure use. You can think of the buffers on their stand planning. It would also improve public information data quality when they know earlier that there is a gate change, then the people don't have to run, but they can walk to that new gate earlier. Reduce and remove late stand and gate changes is, of course, an objective. Preferably no gate changes for passengers at all. And meet airport slot obligations, improve operational staff involvement, and of course, boost their image with reduced emissions. What about the network benefits? They benefit from balanced demand and capacity. If there is more information, such as TUBT known earlier in advance, then the tower can produce pushback times and a pushback sequence and related takeoff times much earlier in advance, enabling ANSP or en route sectors, but also ATFM entities to optimize their ground or minimize their ground delay program and use of CTOT impact. It would optimize the runway throughput because there is a clear demand per hour, per half hour, and there is an advanced knowledge of peaks. So that would mean less queuing at the runway, perhaps even holding aircraft at the gate or some remote buffer to clear the stands and optimize the staff involvement. Of course, network managers would benefit in the same way. Passenger, first, not the last of all, would have a better customer experience. It would be predictable when their aircraft is delayed, and there would likely, as a result of efficiency, be less delay. Definitely less running around the airport. Summarized, there are a lot of benefits for airport CDM airports. Eurocontrol in 2016, it's been a while ago, but produced some numbers on the first 15 airports back then, producing benefits over their first year operating airport CDM. And you can think of a lot of reductions of fuel burn and emissions. You can think operationally from reduction of taxi times, but also ATFM delay minutes, minus 10%. Monetary, you can calculate the reduction of delays into reduction of fuel use, but also in delays, 7 to 9.8%. So there has been significant benefits reported by 15 airports, and I recommend to use and read that source from Eurocontrol. It's called the CDM assessment, and I think that summarizes the third section. Nikki?
Yes, and there is a question, and I'm going to ask Shimei to actually translate it if she's able to. If not, then we'll continue and ask it at the end when we have the Q&A segment. Eugene, we can move on, and then I will answer that question once I can translate it. Thank you.
Okay, we move on. So, final section. Who should be implementing airport CDM? First of all, when should airport CDM be implemented? Here is where ICAO, the Global Air Navigation Plan, recommends two options. B01 is airport CDM information sharing. It is the local implementation of airport CDM, its functions, but above all, the procedures. This requires local performance monitoring, local exchange of information, perhaps a couple of procurements that require the right system, but airport CDM locally will generate local benefits for all the stakeholders, as I just listed out. In a follow-up step, after local airport CDM operations have been established, there can be a connection to the local or regional ATFM function or network manager function. This element enriches operation with enhanced arrival information from the network and benefits operations sharing more accurate departure information. In Europe, this is typically the network manager operation center, where messages from each CDM airport will influence the ATFM tactical and enhanced the ATFM function in order to regulate and drive demand and regulate ATFM CTOTs. I did that for Schiphol a long time ago, but you can see in Europe that 30 airports are now connected to this ATFM function, exchanging data real time constantly. We see also a lot of initiatives in other regions in Asia and the Middle East. So who should implement airport CDM? Your airport, but also you as ANSP, you can do some research by reading, downloading and reading the Eurocontrol Airport CDM Implementation Manual. There is more documentation also from ACI, where a handbook has been written for airport CDM implementation, but also total airport management. There has been key performance measures produced by the Kenzo working group, A-CDM and ATFM integration. There is a Kenzo guide and there is a Kenzo optimization document. So literature all over in order to find whether CDM is something for your airport. But in general, we recommend to do it when the following motives are applicable. The model could be that either the airport or the ANSP is leading the initiative for CDM implementation. We see in Brazil that the SEA has been a huge initiative taker for airports to implement CDM. In Europe, we see airports leading to lead CDM programs. Of course, airport is where we know that they are closer to the turnaround process, and we we see the tendency that airports lead programs, local programs first, and later, of course, work closely together with local ATC. And later, the ATFM function comes in when the local CDM procedure is producing data. But in general, there could be a leadership by ATC or airport. So any airports that has growing beyond 10 million passengers or 100,000 movements is definitely in need for airport CDM, or at least should be considering it. But we also consider airports in a dense network environment. You can think of the London or Paris TMA, where a lot of aircraft are flying, and of course it makes sense to connect those airports. You can also think of the Sao Paulo region or the Middle America region, where a lot of aircraft, where the network is dense. So how do you approach an airport CDM program? One step at a time. It is a project that will take a few years, maybe with some procurement, and a step-by-step approach is recommended. So after to initiate the program, you start with a feasibility study. This includes a gap analysis, a cost-benefit analysis to make a business case, but also to benchmark current operations for future evaluation. You prepare for implementation by setting up a steering board and inviting all the local stakeholders. As we discussed, ground handlers, airlines, especially the major airlines and ground handlers, but definitely air traffic control and the airport. Together, look at procuring systems based on the gap analysis. Procurements cost time. We also want to note that before you can implement procedures and systems, you need to set up a full organization and produce quite a bit of documentation, such as a concept of operation, operational and functional requirements, test plans, etc. But in the end, you need procedures and systems to enable the airport CDM operation. So when you are live with operation, you need to not say, okay, thank you, that was the end of the program, but you need to evaluate the operation, you need to evaluate the performance, you need to keep steering on stakeholder behavior so that they are setting the TUBTs right and they are adhering to the procedures. It's not done when you are live operating CDM, you keep improving it. And when you have a plan, we recommend you set up this workshop where you set up a steering board. You sign a memorandum of understanding with those stakeholders that we just mentioned. And the program management office will be the day-to-day execution of the program. An implementation team, that's where the technical and operational procedures are being invented. They will have working groups to deliver airport CDM operations. The management is done by the PMO, the Program Management Office, and a steering board takes the resource decisions and the funding. Now that you have a plan and a business case, you have to govern, and the steering board is in charge to govern. So you need to set up a performance, terms of reference for supporting working groups, performance team in order to monitor performance, the steering board, of course, to take critical decisions, implementation team or I-team as we call it, that executes, and you need to govern change. Change management requires understanding of the risks and steering on risks and performance. That requires reporting on risk and a change management team under the steering board, joined by multiple stakeholders. They are governing that. So here is your rough implementation plan, how to set it up, how to start on your local airport with ATC. Summarized, establishing buy-in of the stakeholders and good education with training for all the stakeholders, both management and operational staff, will provide results. And remember, and this is a catch that we find often, CDM is not technology alone. It's not plug and play. This is about humans working together in working groups, in steering boards, in performance and understanding, in change management. Humans drive the airport. Humans need to work together, and of course, enabled by automation, data-driven, one single point of truth, and constant evaluation of the performance. Together, you can implement Airport CDM, and I hope that that will be your success in the near future. I think this is the summary of this section. Thank you,
Thanks,
Nikki.
Eugene. Thanks. Javier was able to join us. He's regional director for the LAC region, and I'd like to invite him to say a few words if his connection is still well. So Javier, can you hear us?
Yes, Nikki, can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to make a real quick introduction. Will be in Spanish, so thank you. Primero que todo, mil disculpas.
First of all,
Mi
I
conexión estuvo muy
apologize.
mal.
My connection
Apenas
is
me puedo
failing.
conectar. Segundo, pues
I can
agradecerle a
barely,
todo el
well,
equipo
I was
de
able to fix it,
cáncer,
but
a Shimi, al
first of all, I
público
want to
GA,
thank
a
all the
Rob,
team
que
from
han hecho esto
Canso,
posible.
Jimmy,
También
Ruth,
a
Roth,
Nikki, que
Nikki,
ya
everyone.
ella,
Thank
me
you so
imagino, ya la
much
han
for
conocido.
making
Nikki
this
es nuestra
possible. I'm sure that
gerente de
you now
programas.
know Nikki. She
Excelente
is our
persona,
manager, program
profesional,
manager.
y
She's an
quien ha
excellent
hecho esto también
professional,
posible, ha
and
estado
she is the
trabajando
one who has
junto
been
con
working
Eugene
together with
para darles,
Eugene
ofrecerles
to
este
be able to
webinario.
offer you this
Eh,
webinar.
Lógicamente, agradecer mucho a
Obviously, I want
Viviana,
to
nuestra
thank
traductora,
our translator,
y
thank
a
you,
Eugene,
and
porque es nuestro
Eugene,
facilitador en
because
este
he
webinario.
was our
Eh,
facilitator for this webinar.
Quiero que ustedes ya han visto todos los
Now,
puntos que
you've
Eugene ha
seen
tratado,
all the
pero al mismo
points
tiempo,
that
mientras
Eugene
ustedes ven esos puntos, quiero que
presented, but
piensen
as
y
you see
adopten
all of these, I
como
want
si
you to
estuvieran ya
think
operando de esta forma,
about this as
para
if
que
you
así
were
vamos
already
integrando
operating
y
by
desarrollando
using an
un plan
A-CDM so
de
that we can start
implementación de
developing an
A-CDM. ¿Ok?
implementation plan.
Prácticamente es tomar estos puntos y
Practically,
cómo
it's
los
just
podemos
taking all these
añadir a
points
nuestras
and how we
operaciones,
can
¿no?
add it to
Es
our
muy simple.
operations. It is
La naturaleza, tenemos que
pretty
trabajar
simple.
nosotros
By
conjuntamente
nature,
con la
we need to
naturaleza
work
y
all
viceversa.
together,
Nos tenemos que
and with
adaptar.
nature and vice versa,
Entonces,
we need to
toda la
adapt.
cadena de
So
aeronáutica
all the
tenemos que
aeronautical
conocer cómo es
chain, we need
mejor de
to
adaptarnos.
be
Eugene
find a
lo
way of
ha, justo
adapt
lo ha dicho ahora.
ourselves better.
Es un
Jean
cambio de
just mentioned this.
cultura,
This is
¿no?
a shift in
Entonces, no
culture.
podemos estar
So
trabajando
we
solos,
cannot
individual.
keep working in silos or
Si
individually.
empezamos a
If
trabajar de
we
forma
start
individual,
working like that,
lógicamente los primeros que
we,
nos vamos a
of
afectar
course,
somos
are going
nosotros
to
mismos,
be affecting
¿vale?
ourselves.
Y en consecuente nos vamos
And
a
as a
afectar a
consequence,
toda la
we're going
industria,
to
a
affect or harm
todo
the whole
el
industry
entorno aeronáutico
and the aeronautical environment.
con los que estamos trabajando, ¿no? Entonces sí, pensemos
So let
muy
us
bien de
think
cómo lo
all
implementamos,
together
cómo adoptamos
of
todos
how
estos
we can
puntos que estamos
implement
viendo
this, all the
en este
things that we
webinario,
need to
¿ok? Y
do
de
and
ahí cómo
to
podemos empezar
manage
a
all the information, and how
implementarlo,
can we
pero
start
de una forma más
implementing
activa dentro de nuestras
this in a
operaciones
more
aeronáuticas.
actively fashion
Antes
in our
de
operation. So
déjeme
before
agradecerle a
finishing
Jaime
my
de IATA
remarks, I
y
just
a
want
todo
to
el
thank
equipo de
Jaime
IATA
from
en
IATA
México
and all the
por
team from IATA in Mexico
esta
for
oportunidad
this
y
opportunity
por trabajar
and also
conjuntamente
for working together
en este proyecto.
with us in this
De nuevo,
project.
mil gracias
Again,
y de
thank
nuevo
you,
confío que
everyone.
durante este
I
webinario
trust
vamos
that during
aplicando
this
todas estas
webinar, we will
técnicas
be starting
dentro de
to
nuestras
apply all of
operaciones.
these techniques
Gracias,
in our
Nikki.
operations. Thank you, Nikki. I pass the floor to you again.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Javier. All right, so we do have one question so far, and excuse me, Eugene, the question is, in your experience, what has been the primary impediment or drawback to implementing A-CDM?
Thank you, Nikki, and Javier for all the kind words and the question. Yeah, we see some challenges in resourcing. Often the airport stakeholders underestimate the amount of resources necessary. And as a consultant, I come to the floor and to the steering board saying you need between 10 and 15 full-time resources for the project from multiple stakeholders. And the response is often, okay, well, we can make 6, which is fine. We understand that people are in different projects. There are other priorities more important than efficiency. Yet that will impact on the timeline of the project. Also, procurements are underestimated. Procurements that typically take months to prepare and months to conclude. And then a final one typically is the testing part. When you have systems, you need to test them, validate them. So there is quite a process after the systems have arrived before you can operate or do trials.
Thank you very much, Eugene. I appreciate that. So that was the only question. I am going to wait for another minute or two if someone else in the audience is typing out a question. And in the meantime, I would just like to, again, thank Eugene for his excellent presentation. I'll echo all that Javier has said. And as we're waiting here, I'd just like you all to think of how this can add to your operation, your particular airports, and how we need to adapt and work together. As you can see, and we've heard all the benefits of A-CDM that Eugene has presented. All right, they're coming in. How to start when the resources are limited?
Question.
Good question.
You can do a lot on starting with those resources that you have. Of course, you can outsource. That's one typical solution, but you can start doing the analysis. Start by collecting the performance unit in order to provide data on a lot of the basic KPIs that are available without operating CDM. You can look for analysis on what systems do we need to implement and procure. You can start identifying that. If you want to convince stakeholders to join and buy into the program, you can make a business case. I think these are common steps, but they are also necessary steps. You can start writing the memorandum of understanding, the terms of reference, so that at least you're organized for the moment that you do have commitment of resources. There are quite a few steps that you can take up front, and analysis of current performance indicators, that's always a good start, because then you can identify the challenges and discuss them with stakeholders and say, okay, we clearly have some challenges to overcome. Is CDM indeed the right solution? If yes, then let's investigate further.
Correct. Is it the right tool? So you're starting small and you're starting the pre-preparation process, as I call it. Another question that came about is, can this be implemented in smaller airports?
But since it is a multiple year implementation project, we see that the examples of Schiphol, that was a little bit over the top. That was more than 8 years from the start, with a lot of pitfalls, a lot of missed trials that went not so well. There are other airports. Recently in Vietnam, they did a pretty good job, but it took them 2.5 years. We see that small airports can do it, but even for small airports, the investment may be, and the resourcing may be too high a challenge. That's why we say the minimum is growing towards 10 million passengers or 100,000 movements, or such as the London airspace, or an airspace with so much operational challenges requires it in order to predict the traffic, even from the smaller airports.
I think the key here, Eugene, is open communication and working together with each other. A simple step is that we can all start is with communication and coordination with all stakeholders involved. And I think that is ideal? Another question here is, what are common errors made in implementation?
I've seen a few good ones. Of course, we've seen a very big airport using an old departure manager that was not suitable for CDM operations. So you need to start thinking about the future, make a concept of operation for the future, which will be based on efficient operation and a lot of data sharing. You need to procure your systems for those future operations and not base the requirements on today's operations. That requires a lot of discussions. We see implementation projects often being squeezed in too little time frame, as if reducing the time frame for implementation will be good for the quality of the results. This is partly research with new systems. You need to test, confirm whether all the tests of the system are successful. Then you can base your operations manual on the successful new functions. Then you need to go to validate those benefits that we expected in the business case. And that's a step often misunderstood. This requires 3 months of preparation. Live trials need to be prepared before you go to live operations. You need to do a couple of live trials. That requires a lot of operational documentation and steps and decision making that take time. So the steering board often wishes to underestimate for research purposes and understood that the time can be less than 2 years. But we have not seen an airport implementing from the scratch, including the procurement, less than 2 years time.
All right, hang on 1 second. All right. The error in this region is that I'm just communicating with Javier, so this is a question from him. The error in the region is that they want to buy everything without first talking to each other. And as you mentioned, Eugene, without having ConOps or an idea of what they actually want, what can we do to solve?
This is a common one that we see often. By talking to each other in working groups. We recommend typically the working group concept of operation, which reflects the operational stakeholders, the operations of ATC, airline, airport, and ground handler. That's where their analysts start talking to each other. How can we improve the current operations? What are the challenges of the current operations? So that's where you need performance reports. We need to start agreeing on the common challenges we have. And in that working group, you can launch question after question for more analysis to the performance analyst, the data analyst. What challenges do we have? Can we confirm that from the data? We need to start looking at the current data that we have. And if we need to merge data sets because we don't have, one stakeholder doesn't have it all, then typically ATC and airport need to merge their data sets, look at the challenges, confirm that there are major challenges, and agree on that in the steering board, that the challenges are obvious and that we agree on them. We need to agree on common facts. And the challenges are those facts coming from the data that will commonly give the idea, all right, we need to do something here. And before we start buying, we need to know, what do we need? First, we have a challenge. We have the analysis, we agree on it. Let's make a concept of operation resulting in operational scenarios that are common at that airport, operational requirements resulting from scenarios, and translate them into function requirements. Then we have documented what we need. And then we can decide we develop internal or we go to market. But we need to think before we buy, so that also the suppliers who wish to sell, that they cannot provide their vision of the truth, but that the local airport is in control of what they need. They tell the suppliers what they need and not the other way around. So we got to build up a negotiation position to the suppliers by thinking at the local airport and have a common view.
Thank you, Eugene. I think that's the key in there. It's having the common view based on the data, right? And getting everyone on the same page. That is definitely key. All right. There aren't any additional questions. Again, thank you very much, Eugene. I do appreciate your time and your expertise. I do appreciate the questions that have been asked. And again, sorry, in communication with Javier. So, all right, if there aren't any more questions, we are looking to or will be closing this webinar soon. Again, before we formally close the webinar, I just want to express my gratitude to the Canzo events team for their hard work in making this webinar possible. I also want to thank Javier, the regional director in the LAC region, who was just on with us, for bringing this important topic to our attention and helping to start the facilitation of the discussion with Eugene and this webinar. I would also like to extend my many thanks to Eugene for sharing your time and your expertise with us. And last but certainly not least, I just want to thank all of the attendees for joining us. Again, you will receive the presentation slides and link to the webinar recording within a week. Please note that we are looking for 1 or 2 airports to participate in beta testing. Again, as Eugene has mentioned, it is, and I mentioned as well, we can start very simple. And even if we lack resources at this time, we can start in the pre-preparation phase where we analyze the data and we all come together and we just look for that common data thread there to start simple with not operating in a silo, but operating together and working together. So if you are interested in the beta testing, please do reach out to me and I will get Javier involved and we can start again looking for 1 or 2 airports to start with this, and it's the initial first important step. I would also like to encourage everyone on this call to consider joining a Canzo operational working group based on your expertise. And if you have any questions about that, again, you can contact me. My information is going to be or is already up on this slide, operations@canzo.org. And if in addition, you all have any questions for Eugene based on his expertise or Javier for the LAC region, or again, myself in reference to the global operations working groups, just again, please feel free to email us and we'll be happy to provide any answers and respond to your emails. Again, I sincerely thank you all for joining this event, your participation, and you all take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Adios.